Everybody, and welcome to the next webinar in our series. I'm really pleased to have Simon Rickman with us again, and so some of you already have joined us for some of the previous habits of, and so this time we've got the habits for highly effective time management. The idea for this came up actually from our forum members who were this is a few months ago. They were saying that they needed some help with time management. I think with the amount of people that have booked for this one, I think there's a lot of other people who are in the same boat that would like to know a little bit more how to manage their time. So just to say that we actually, there's a chat button. So if you'd have any questions along the way, please use the chat button and we'll make sure we get to as many of those as we can. If we miss any of those questions, we will get back to you after the event. So you will hear from us. And the recording, the webinar is being recorded. So but I think I shall edit out the piece about Simon and his wife and mother-in-law. So just introduce myself. Hopefully most of you will know me. My name is Laurie Beagle. I'm Managing Director at Forums International. Just a little bit of a plug for us. We run 10 groups of forums in the UK, in Europe, and also globally as well. And everything, of course, is now virtual. Everything's by Zoom. And so if you want to find out a little bit more about our forums, please go to our new website, which was launched a few weeks ago. So, and I'd like to introduce Simon Rickman, Director of Peak Performance and Potential. So, thank you, Simon. Thanks again for supporting us, and I'm looking forward to this myself. I think I need some time management. So, anyway, I'm going to hand over control to you now. So, and we'll if I can find you. Panelists, or make host. Right.
I am now the host. Brilliant.
You
okay.
are now the host.
Fantastic. Okay, so let me just, excuse me. I'm just going to drag up some of this stuff here so it's out the way and put it into slideshow mode. I was saying to Laurie, we were chatting just before we started, that this is the anniversary of my very first webinar. On the 22nd of April, 2020, it was the 7 habits for working at home effectively, which I know I've delivered to this group. And I said to Laurie, I really didn't think I'd be doing something in the same way 12 months on, but here we are, but we're moving in the right direction. So, why are we here today? Look at that, Peter Drucker, very famous leadership guru. Time is the scarcest resource of managers. If it isn't managed, nothing else can be managed. And I know that, this month is Stress Awareness Month. I know Laurie was pushing that out on LinkedIn to make us all aware of that. And I was actually thinking, 2020 and 2021 is Stress Awareness Year or years. And so much has changed since where we were a year ago. We've had to learn to work from home effectively. Many of us have had the opportunity to reassess, what's really important in my life? The routines that we were finding ourselves in, that we've been doing for years and years and years, all that travel, all that commuting, staying away from home, all that kind of stuff just had to go on the back burner because we couldn't do it. And we're thinking, actually, is that really important? And of course, from a stress perspective, it's about building resilience. And again, I know Laurie's given me the opportunity to talk to you about the 7 habits to manage your resilience. And what it means is that COVID is just redefined the way that we do things now. And of course, it's going to continue to define how we do things in the future. A lot of us have had time, not all of us, because the situation has been different, but a lot of us have had the time to think about, okay, who am I, where am I going, and how am I going to get the best out of myself? And the question, which is absolutely on everybody's lips at the moment, for those of us who have been working from home, is When am I going to go back to the office? Am I going to go back to the office? Can I work from home? I know I've got some clients who are shutting their offices, so they will be working from home, and others that are saying, no, we expect everybody to come back to the office by September. So we don't know what that is going to look like. But whatever it is, we need to be effective in any sort of situation. And as Stephen Covey, my hero, says, the challenge is not to manage time, but actually it's about managing ourselves. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. Laurie has already mentioned some of these. So keeping yourselves on mute. There will be opportunities for some questions. There's a little slide here, which I'm afraid you can't see, but it does say any questions in there. That'll be obvious when we get to that point. I've got some polling questions that I know you like, and I've now included some reactions. So it's a different way of getting some feedback from people, which I know they like as well. So there is a question and answer session at the end, and also in the middle. If you can't wait, just go into the chat. Lauren is very kind of looking at that for me. So for those of you who are now seasoned 7 Habits supporters and advocates like myself, habit number 2 is beginning with the end in mind. So what do we want to get out of today? Well, first of all, thank you for investing your time in this. Am I going to teach you anything new? Maybe. I don't know. I think it's in the book of Ecclesiastes. So we're going back to biblical times that said there is nothing new under the sun. So what we do is we kind of rebadge it, or we make it more appropriate for our times. But I'm going to be sharing with you a number of ideas and suggestions based on my research and insight. And we decided to do this in 2 halves, because to do the 7 habits will take about an hour and a half. So we're doing it in 2 halves. Today, I'm going to be talking about how can you get back some sort of control, the importance of focusing on your goals, and what to prioritize. And then for next week, I'm going to be talking about the importance of being assertive and how that can help us manage time, dealing with procrastination, managing your workload, and setting some routines. Now, I know one of the constructive criticisms I get from my clients is that my webinars are very content rich, because I am a giver. I am a radiator, not a drain. And what that means is there is a lot of information there. But what I say to them is, you know, I don't know what you guys need. So choose what is relevant for your situation. And I've got 3 objectives. Whatever I do in my coaching, my webinars, my workshops, it doesn't matter. There are 3 things. Number 1, it's about increasing your self-awareness. So a lot of people say to me, Simon, that was great because you reminded me of the things that I should be doing, but I don't. Secondly, it might be, if that's the case, changing your attitude. So if you don't make any changes, then nothing changes. And of course, that leads to the 3rd one, which is so important. That is about taking action. If you don't take any action, then you haven't made any progress. So hopefully I'll be able to achieve those with you today. Now, because I'm aware that you may know some of this stuff, I would always counsel my clients and say, be careful about making any assumptions. Let me demonstrate it with this video.
All the boys are calling crazy girl. I hope she sings this tonight. I know. Hey guys, pull over. We need to go.
Come on. Oh, honey. Here's some money.
What do we got here?
Hello. I'm her daddy.
I don't hate your mother.
Morning, Bev.
I love those. And to whet your appetite, I've got 3 more to show for you next week. So you've got to come back for some.
All the boys.
So let's use the 7 habits as a roadmap. And again, as Covey says, if I really want to improve my situation, the one thing I can work on is myself. So you might be in a situation where you are just out of control. You're not managing your time. And hopefully by the end of the journey, you will have much more control. So habit number one is about being proactive. It's about taking full responsibility for managing my time. Habit number two is beginning with the end in mind. But to do that, we need to know why we are doing whatever it is that we are doing. And then habit number three is called put first things first. And this is focusing on how we schedule our priorities. What are the things that are our most important in our lives? And they're the three I'm going to talk about today. So they're the other four, just to prove that I do know them, and we'll be talking about those next week. So let's start with habit number one. This is about being proactive. And as I said, taking full responsibility for managing your time. And what I talk to my clients about is, well, actually, how aware are you of whatever it is that you do? And we can use something called the conscious competence model in order to demonstrate that. And this is based on two variables. There's the extent to which we are conscious or we're aware of something or what we do, and our level of skill or our competence, our ability to do that. So when we don't know that we don't have a skill, we call that unconscious incompetence. In other words, we don't know what we don't know. And as we become aware of that skill, we move to the conscious incompetence. So we know that we're not that good at it, but at least we're aware of that. And as we progress through our skills and development, we come to the state of conscious competence. So we know we've got that skill, we can do that skill, and everything's great. But actually there is a fourth stage as well, which is called unconscious competence. And this happens when we do things without even thinking about it. And a really good way of illustrating the essence of this model is for those of you who drive, and I'm sure most of you drive, if you remember the very first time you got in the car for your very first lesson, you were probably unconsciously incompetent, as well as consciously incompetent. You thought, well, I've no idea how I'm going to drive this car. I don't know what I don't know, but I do know that I can't do it. If the driving instructor just said, all right, Simon, put the key into the slot, whatever it's called, and just drive, then you don't know. And as you have lessons, you learn how to drive. And that's where we want to get to today. We want us to be consciously competent in how we can manage our time. So look, the good news is that there are lots and lots of ideas out there on the internet. And I just did a Google search on some of them. They're meant to be helpful. So what is priority? How do we measure priority? Well, priority is importance times urgency. Time management is planning times willpower. Planning is analysis plus prioritization plus scheduling. Lead time is the order received minus the order delivered. There's so many of these things, but what do they mean and how can they be appropriate for your particular situation? And it means that we can get very confused. So with all of these things, and there are people who make a living out of doing these things and do agile consultancy and six belt, all that kind of stuff. I can't remember what it is. It's great, but most of us mere mortals get confused and we give up. And what happens? We go back to our old habits. And that's why when Laurie said to me, do you want to do something on time management? I said, absolutely, because we all need a good reminder on it. So we need to take responsibility for managing our time. And we're all affected by external pressures that puts a demand on our times, our clients and our customers, our bosses, our family. If we're working from home, the kids, doing homeschooling, whatever those things are, there are lots of demands on our time. And if we look at the stimulus response theory, it gives us an idea of how we can manage it. Because there is an event, then there is a response to that event, and then there is a result, there's an outcome. So as an example, in a typical work environment, the event is that our boss asks us for a report in an hour. We want to go home, it's 5 o'clock. And so we then say, okay, I've got to do something about it. I've got to rearrange my schedule. I've got to ring my wife to say that I will be home late for dinner and all that kind of stuff. And that result could equal a frustration, possibly, don't know, depends on the situation. But the point is that we have the freedom to choose how we're going to respond to any situation that we face, whatever it is. And the choices that we have are twofold. We can have what is called a reactive situation, where you can respond to those who shout loudest. So those we get it done, it's their agenda. So they shout loudest, so we just do things for them. It could be that it's your boss. I always learn, just get your boss off your back. So you end up doing things for your boss, which perhaps wasn't the most important thing to do, but it's all about damage limitation. And what happens then is you feel like you're acted upon. You haven't got that power. You haven't got that control. And you can see yourself as a victim of other people's agendas. So in other words, I have too much to do. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. That's option one. Option two is to choose to be proactive. And this is about being responsible and accountable for how we go back to the situation that we're facing. So we can perhaps step back. We can say, I'm going to take control over this situation. I want to be in charge. I want to be a victor. And therefore, I will prioritize my time. I will use positive language to think about not what I can't do. It's not fair. This is, this always happens to me and all this kind of stuff. It's a case of, okay, we are where we are. What can I do positively? And this means that we might need to change our habits. And it means that we might need to delete some time-wasting activities that we don't even realize are becoming a drain, and some people that become a drain on our time. And this may require to do what we call a paradigm shift, because the way that the habits that we have, the way that we think and what we do is what is called our paradigm or our truth. And if that's being challenged and we're open to be challenged, we can potentially think and act differently, and we can then try and create a new positive habit. So what can we do about it? Well, one of the things we can do that's positive is what we call brain dumping. And this is where we get all of this stuff that's in our heads, all the stresses and the nagging thoughts. All of these we carry around in our heads, and they can create a lot of stress. So one of the things we should do is just write everything down, whatever it is. Don't value judge it. Just get it down out of your head, and that will help clear this space. It's very cathartic. And what we end up doing there is reducing this overload of information, and we can have a clearer mind. So we can do a number of things. We can have like a productive diary, which could be like a physical thing, or it could be electronic. All of these things are available to us. Write things down there. Some people are very visual, so they have like what they call a display board, and they can put visual things on, all the things they need to do, pictures of things that they need to do, post-it notes, photos, whatever those things are. And of course, now we're blessed with lots of different time management apps, and they're great, but in my opinion, and that's all that is, I find them really kind of complicated. I'm not prepared to spend the time to understand how to use them, but if you can, then I know there's a lot of them out there that really work very well. So once we've done this, once we've got everything out there, we need to what we call declutter. And we have to ask ourselves some really important questions, which is, what can I delete? Do I really want to do that thing? Do I really need to do it? If not, chuck it in the bin, either physically in the bin or electronically in the bin. Secondly, is it realistic? Am I ever going to get round to doing that? If it's not, then actually I'm not going to do it. Get rid of it. And thirdly, if there's stuff that I want to do, but I don't have the time, but it's important, I'm going to defer it. Not I'm going to put it off, which we'll talk about procrastination next week. But I'm going to say, you know what, I will do that, but I'm going to schedule some time from a position of strength and say, I will do that, but I'm going to move it along in my diary so I don't lose sight of it. So that's brain dumping. So coming back to where we choose our time, we've got these circles of choice. We looked at the circle of concern and the circle of influence. Now, in our circle of concern, we've got the lives of celebrities and politicians, and dare I say, football club owners that distract us. Interesting one. COVID, the news, natural disasters, the weather, economy, all of these things are things that we're interested in, but we have no control over them. Whereas in our circle of influence, we've got things like our attitude and enthusiasm, the things that we choose to read and buy, the places that we choose when we can to travel, when we will be able to shortly, the skills that we choose to learn, how far we go in any organization, what we read, all that kind of stuff. And so that circle of concern, if we live in that circle, we can't do much about it. We can't change it. So what happens if you think about people who live in that circle, they tend to complain about things, and they attract people that complain about things. So we want to make that circle as small as possible. And we want to make the circle of influence that positive can-do place where we can choose to do things and we can do things. We can have that positive mindset and actions. We want to make that as large as possible. So let's see how we can make this happen. So if we have a client or a customer, they require instant advice. And of course, they're our clients, so we have to drop everything and we have to give them the advice. But do we? Perhaps from a confidence perspective, we can confidently say, which I can't, is it really necessary? Do you really need that now? Yes, I recognize the importance, but maybe we need to reschedule, but we don't. We just let the client walk all over us because, of course, the client's always right. If the job's too big, it puts off a lot of people. So maybe we should be breaking it down into manageable tasks and focus on the first things first, habit number 3, rather than just being put off by the whole. But often we look at that whole thing and we think, oh my God, I don't know where to start. So we don't. The other thing we do is say, I've got to do it myself. I want to, excuse me, I want to get the job done. I might as well do it myself. But maybe we need to show some more trust in our team. And maybe we need to think about getting them involved, giving them an opportunity and delegating. Again, I'll talk more about that next week. So in terms of our first bit of fun, if you'd like to, Laurie, I can't see the people, so if you tell me, please. If you tend to live in your circle of influence, I'd like to give a clap. And if it's in your circle of concern, then I'd like to see that lovely face. As I can't see people, Laurie, if you can tell me roughly how many people are clapping. I'm getting some things thrown at me, but maybe you can, I can't hear you, Laurie.
No, I can't see them either, unfortunately.
Okay, that's fine. So what's happening, okay, I can see some people flashing up some stuff on my screen for some reason. Normally you could see it. So we think they've changed this. So I've got some raised hands here. Raised hand. Oh, here we go. They're coming through. Lots of raised hands. Great. So we're getting people who, in fact, everybody lives in their circle of influence, which is great because I normally don't get that. I normally get some brave people saying, do you know what? Actually, I do live in my circle of concern as well. That's your choice. I like it. Thank you for that. The second thing I want to talk to you about is called the power of 3. Now, most of us have what we call a to-do list, but that to-do list actually is more about our aspirations. I'd like to do that. And we want to turn that to-do list into a will do this. I am going to do that. And that's more motivating. So what I suggest you do at the end of the day, just before you pack up work, I want you to list the top 3 things to do next, first thing the next day, and put against it a rough time estimate. It's a budget. We don't know, but it's something. And what happens is when you do that as the last thing before you finish work, is your subconscious mind is focusing on that while you sleep. It's not trying to fix things. It's not going to stop you from sleeping, but it's saying these are the things that are at the top of what I need to do. And then when you start work the next day, the very first thing you do, the very first thing is the first thing that is on that list. And you work that until you have completed that action, or you go as far as you can. Then you move to the second item. You don't start looking at emails. You don't start looking at the phone, anything like that. You check if anything else more important has come in because these things happen. We can't manage it. If not, you then complete the second item and you complete it or you take it as far as you can. Then you move to the third item. Again, just check, has anything of real urgence come in? If not, you then complete the third thing. So by a period of time, I don't know what it is, could be the end of the morning, it could be the whole day, but you've done the top 3 things that are most important for you. When you've done those 3 things, that's when you go to your emails. That's when you do your phone calls. That's when you do your meetings. And at the end of the day, you then create another list for the next 3 things that you want to do at the beginning of the next day, plus the time estimate. And you do that over and over again. So you make it a habit. It becomes your norm. So every day, at the end of the day, you think, what's the most important thing I need to do? The 3 most important things. And that's what you focus on. Then you can work the rest of your day. So it's our time for our first polling. So I would like to know from you, which of these is the best description of what time management is all about? Is it managing yourself in relation to time? Is it managing your time, continuing habits and activities that waste time, or keeping your time management strategies the same? So I'm just going to launch that poll now. and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it. This is all anonymous. We're not interested in who puts in the right or wrong answers. It's just a bit of fun. So I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And thank you very much indeed. Let's end the poll. So let's see what people have said. Let's share the results. So most of you are saying that the best description of time management is managing yourself in relation to time. But not everybody said that, as you can see. So let's see if they were right. Yes, they are. Well done. Pat yourselves on the back. That is what time management is all about. So any questions anybody has? If you have a question, if you put it into the chat, Laurie can have a look at the chat. You can come off of mute, whatever you want to do. I really don't mind. Okay, I'm not seeing the chat numbers going up, so I'm assuming I can move on. So thank you very much for that. Okay, let's talk about habit number 2. Habit number 2 is beginning with the end in mind. And in my world, from time management, it's about knowing your why. As Einstein said, if you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal. And I think he kind of knew a few things or two. Because we need to start with a clear understanding, what is it that we are doing? Why are we doing it? What's our destination? What's our mission? What's our goals? What are the targets that we have? I talk to my clients and say, you know, what are your company objectives? Oh, we don't have any. Then how do you know if the people in your organization are meeting what you want them to? Oh, everybody knows, right? But they don't. The CEO will have an understanding of what his or her objectives are. The director of sales and the director of finance, the director of customer service and HR and whatever will then end up having their own understanding and perception of what that is. If you don't write it down, people won't know what that is. So I always implore people to say, understand what your purpose is. And how we do this is not by focusing on what we do. It's important, but it's not at the center. It's not even the how we do it. Again, it's absolutely important and fundamental, but it's not at the center. What we need to focus on is the why. And if you want to read a really good book, Simon Sinek, one of my heroes, wrote the book, Start with Why. And if you understand that why, that purpose, that will drive everybody in a certain direction. I went on a webinar yesterday with a client, and it was about how the Prussian army trained their troops in the 19th century. And it was to do with, I can't remember everything, the amount of autonomy, and I can't remember the other A, which is going to annoy me. I can't remember it. It doesn't matter, because it's about autonomy. They gave them lots of autonomy to do what they needed to do. And they found that they were very successful because they understand their core purpose, but they weren't being micromanaged in order to achieve that. It was very good. It was very interesting. Somebody, von Moltke, I think his name, very famous general in the Prussian army. And management gurus like Jack Welch and people like that, you know, use that sort of philosophy. So we need to use our purpose. When COVID hit us this time last year, I said to my client, part of that working from home is, do the people who work for you know what their purpose is? If they know their purpose, you can trust them. And the whole argument about not letting people work from home before we had to was managers said, I don't trust them. They will watch Good Morning Television or whatever the stuff is that's on in the morning. They won't be doing their work. And what's happened is, because we had no choice, we found through research that productivity did not drop, and we had to find our best way through it, which the vast majority of people have done. That's because they knew their purpose. Because if we don't, we climb the ladder of success to find we're at the top of the wrong building, or it's leaning against the wrong wall. And it's a lovely one. Often when I do some counseling with my clients, and I find, why are you not happy? Because they didn't do this. But did they know that? Well, they should know that. No, but did you write it down? Do you have a one-to-one and all that kind of, do you have an annual review? Do you have objectives? Stuff that is so basic. I haven't got the time to do it. That's why they have the problem. If you invest that time, you'll climb the right ladder and you'll get to the top of the right building. And to do that, we need to have goal setting. There's research, there's tons of research on this. And goal setting is a life skill. Another challenge we had when we went into lockdown is our routines had been taken away from us. The routine of getting up at whatever, 6 o'clock in the morning, getting on the train, putting on the iPods or whatever, listening to the news, listening to the music or whatever it was, commuting with lots of people, and then the return journey, that was taken away from us. Our routines helped us. That habit was very good at keeping us sane, and we had to build new habits. So we have to have goals to drive us towards something, whether it's financial or physical, whatever those things are, we need them. This is not just about work. So let me ask you the question. How many of you set goals, not just in your job, but in your life? So let me see how many of you clap your hands, and I can see it coming up on my screen. And if you don't, then we have that expression face. So we've got lots of raised hands. Okay, so I don't know, Laurie, I'm getting raised hands, so it's interesting. I would normally see the little icons, but lots of raised hands. So I'm cool with that. I'm assuming a raised hands is the clap, so that's fine. So we're seeing that, which is good. That is what we want. Lovely. Thank you. Brian Tracy, one of these motivational gurus, said in his book Goals, fewer than 3% of people have clear written goals. Okay, so you may have a goal, but do you write it down? If you write it down, if you visualize it, it will drive you through it. It reminds me of a study that Harvard University did back in 1953. Their graduating students, they said, right, we're gonna follow your career for the next 20 years, and they did. And 20 years later, in 1973, they got the same group of people back together, and they worked out that the amount of money that people have made during that time, and they realized that only 3% of people had written down their goals, were earning something like 97% more than everybody else, or something. It's not exactly, I can't remember exactly, but the point is that these were Harvard graduates, the top, or one of the top business schools in the world, that even their graduates didn't write goals down, but those that did were much more successful. Listen, I know this is a lot easier said than done. We wouldn't be doing this. I'm talking to educated people. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking I'm talking to grandmother sucking eggs. I don't know. But if it was so simple, why is there a demand for this sort of thing? And why do so many of us still want to do it? And part of it is because we allow ourselves to be robbed of our time. So I'd like you just to look at this list. I mean, this was a long list. I just picked 10 things here, and I've got something else. Write down 3 of the top time robbers in your life. It could be too many emails, or you could have too many calls. There's 2 separate ones. It doesn't matter. It's not about me. It's about you. Write down the 3 things that you feel are robbing you of your time, that you then need to do something about it, because that's the question. What action are you going to take to eliminate these? And hopefully some of the things I'm talking about this week and next week will help you. I think most of us have heard of the acronym SMART, and it's about working smart, not working hard. So let me remind you, if you haven't heard it, it's the first time, then cool. The S stands for specific. So Jack Canfield is another one of my heroes, said vague goals produce vague results. So we need to be quite specific about what is it that we want to achieve. If you're clear about that, if you list what benefits you're going to get, that will give you the drive, the motivation, and the reason to pursue that. So number 1, be specific. The M is for measurable. We need to know, what does success look like? You know, climbing that ladder again. We need to be able to track, am I on target or am I off target? And we need an objective measuring system to make sure we can stay on track. Now, those of you who remember, well, some of us will remember the Apollo 11 lunar module, 1969, landed on the moon, and it was flying from Earth to the moon. And when it didn't fly in a straight line, it went like this, and it went like this. It was off course 93% of the time. And what the guys in mission control were doing is, as it was going off course, hey, moon, we're over here or here, let's bring it back on course. It goes over here, let's bring it back on course. Was it a success? Absolutely. Because it went off course, it didn't make it a failure. We just bring it back on course. So if you've got measurable goals and you feel like you're going in the opposite direction to where you need to go, you come back on course, you fix it. The A is for achievable. Are they realistic? Because if they're not achievable, you're probably not going to do it. I worked for a recruitment company. My boss, who was the CFO, and I was head of recruitment, a bit like oil and water, all he was interested in was the numbers. So we had a weekly meeting. What are the numbers? I'm interested in the people, the how we do it. All he cares about is the numbers. So he used to, for my department, he would set these ridiculously stupid, unachievable goals that we would have to earn X, hundreds of thousands of pounds in the year, which would generate a bonus for us. And when we worked it out, I thought we were never going to get it. But I don't need those things. I think I'm going to create my own achievable goals that I think are going to be realistic and just make, and we were very successful. His were just unrealistic. He was being unreasonable. Didn't stop me from motivating myself, but we need to think about that. The R is, are they relevant? Are they relevant for what you do, your values, your purpose? Coming back to your purpose. Are they in alignment with what makes you happy? For the short term, it's a pleasure, or for the long term, it's life is the pursuit of happiness. American Constitution, President Jefferson, third president of the United States. And the T is it timed? We need to have something. So we've got deadlines, we've got milestones, we've got targets, because what happens that subconsciously our mind starts thinking about, I need to achieve that. So I want to drive towards it. And again, if I'm off target, how much time do I need to get back on target? And if we do all of those things, which when you look at them on paper, they're obvious, it will increase the probability of you hitting what you want to hit and to achieve your goals. So talking of smart and talking about time-saving technology, let's see if this works.
Playing jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, dentist at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
And we're going to do one more.
Oh, yeah. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey, open door.
Play on the floor.
Get on the floor. Open the door.
Wrong
Open the door.
voice command. Error.
Hey, here. With a rock. Open door. Open door. Higher.
Higher volume.
Higher.
Higher.
What can I say? All of these things aren't necessarily as smart as we think. So, second polling question. When prioritizing, which goal should you choose? Do you choose a goal that identifies only what you want, or the one that's based on how long it will take you to achieve it? Or is it a goal that will have the greatest impact on your life, or spread yourself thin by focusing on several goals at once? So oh, sorry, I didn't stop the sharing last time. My apologies. Hopefully that didn't get in the way. You got rid of it. Let's look at prioritizing. Let me launch the poll. So which one would you choose? Okay, so we've got about half the people, about 3/4 of the people. I'm going to count down with 5 seconds to go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Lovely. Thank you. About 88%. Superb. So let's end the poll and let's share the results. Well, it looks like we have a winner here. 81% choose a goal that will have the greatest impact on our lives. So I'm going to stop sharing. Make sure I do it this time. So number 3, yes. So for those of you, give yourself a pat on the back. That's excellent. Thank you for that. So again, if there are any questions, please put it in the chat or come off of mute. Otherwise, I'll look at our last habit for today, putting first things first. So let's do that. This is all about scheduling our priorities. How many of you use notes and checklists? These are the tasks that you don't want to forget. You write everything down. You do things from top to bottom. So if you do use those, just give me, I used to say, give me the clap, but it didn't go down it didn't sound right. So I don't say that anymore. Give me a clap. So we've got lots of raised hands. Great, fantastic. So people use that. Yeah, pretty obvious. That is what we do. That's fine. I implore you to carry on doing it, but just remember that it doesn't provide any perspective. When you write everything down, you're not necessarily knowing what's the prioritized order of it. How many of you use calendars and appointment books? And that can help you to clarify when to complete things. You can stack items back to back. So again, I can see lots of raised hands, which is great. That's good. We like to use these things, but let me just counsel you, just think about it. But it doesn't give you that longer term perspective. Very good for the short term. These things are good, but there's two sides to it. How many of you prioritize and clarify your values and live by them so you can have more control and more direction in your life? Okay, oh, it's a little bit slower in terms of raising the hands, but I'm getting some, but not as many this time are putting their hands up. Okay, it's a few more coming in. It's great. It's all about understanding what our expectations are. But if we're too rigid, it can clash with spontaneity and we can become a little bit too scheduled and restricted. That's all. All of these things are good, but there is a but, as you can see with all of them. Last one, how many of you think about your energy levels, which will go up and down throughout the day? So you can get more done in less time, produce high quality work, and organize your work around your natural ebbs and flows. So we're getting some hands up on this one. Great. Again, another thing it's worth from a self-awareness perspective, it's important. But do you schedule the most difficult tasks when your energy levels are up? I don't know. I know that I'm better in the morning. So I start work normally between 9 and 9:30. And by, I'm not going to say by, but certainly by 3 o'clock, I've had enough. Just 3 o'clock, I go for a walk with my wife, with the dog, regardless of the weather. I have to get out the house. Between 4 and 5, I'm a zombie. So I know that sort of kind of time is not giving me something to do. At that time is a waste of time. So it's understanding. But my wife, on the other hand, she doesn't start work till 11. Because she's not very switched on first thing in the morning. That's her body clock works differently and she'll work later than me. It's just the way that it works. And of course, the one thing that we can use, Covey is all about time management and he created this time management matrix. And it's the relationship between what's important, what are the things that are going to help me to achieve my purpose, my goals, versus is it urgent? Does it demand my time now? And I love this. It's often associated with somebody else's agenda. Your emails is somebody else's agenda. You are ticking things off of their agenda. I know it needs to be done, but when I looked at it, I thought, yeah, that's absolutely right. I want to be in control. I want to focus on my goals that are the highest priorities. So we can pop, you would have seen this because I use this in all of my webinars, the relationship between important and urgent and non-urgent and not important. And in quadrant 1, we have what is called the quadrant of necessity. It's those things that happen. So again, I tell you, you do those 3 things, the power of 3, but something comes in that you hadn't planned and you have to drop them. But if that's all you do, you're going to get stressed, okay? If that's all you do, you will not achieve the things that you want to do. So you will be doing those things, but you want to try and prevent those. In quadrant 3, they're urgent, but they're not even important. So you get needless interruption. So a lot of people, when they were working from home and they had kids at home or their spouse or partner was interrupting them, they didn't really appreciate and value that this is time that I'm doing things. So how do you manage that? Some meetings and calls, people have endless Zoom calls. Is it really necessary? We'll talk about meetings next week. But we want to, again, try and keep these to an absolute minimum if we can. Then the worst one of all is the quadrant of waste. It's not urgent, it's not even important. It's the trivia, it's the busy work and the time wasters. It's things that actually not adding any value. Now, of course, there may be excessive TV when, you know, we're on furlough and we haven't got things to do. I get all of that. But this is during a normal work week. If you find you're drifting towards quadrant 4, you are wasting your time. So where we want to get to is quadrant 2. It's the quadrant of effectiveness. It's important, but it hasn't become urgent that you're in that crisis. So it's planning for things, it's expecting things, it's having contingencies, it's preventing things, thinking if that goes wrong, what do I need to do? How can I make sure that doesn't happen? And it's about building positive relationships, because it's all about people. And so how we can use that from a time management perspective is, if you write that list I told you about, you know, you write those lists, go through that list. But actually, when you go through that list, say, is that a quadrant 1, 2, or 3 activity? And how many quadrant 2 activities are there in that list? How many 3 and 4s are there that shouldn't be? What you could do with the things that you do, you can have some sort of code. You could do it by project or topic or by client. And you can use a lot of things electronically. You can put them in folders. And you need to estimate how long do you think you will be spending time. And some of the time, if it's a new thing, we don't know. But if you estimate it or guesstimate it, it's giving you something to drive to. I think it will take me an hour. An hour's gone. I think, actually, I was wrong in my estimation. I'm off course. I reckon it would take me another half an hour. I go back on course. And that's how you can do it. So for you just to write down for yourselves, where do you think you're spending most of your time? Is it in quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4? If you're not putting 2, then the question I'd ask you is, what can you do? What do you need to do to move stuff out of 1 and into 2, stuff out of 3, stuff out and not even doing 4, doing very little of 4. Look, wait for the weekend, you can do it then. So another question I ask my clients is, how productive are you? Now, if you think you're productive, you can do a Google search called Productivity Questionnaire by Mind Tools. Suggest you write that down. And it brings up this very simple but very effective questionnaire. There are only 16 statements, and you answer it as honestly as you want to. So you fill in, I put in the radio buttons. And then at the end, ka-ching, it comes up with where it says whether you're productive or not. And so you can compare if you think you're productive or what it actually says. So if you make a note, you can do that in your own time, but it's kind of cool. And we talk about multitasking, right? I mean, it's very general. Men can't multitask, women can. That's what they say. This video will tell us nobody should be multitasking. Science says it doesn't work.
How do you stay focused in a world filled with so many distractions? How can you accomplish more by doing less? How do you knock down a big goal that seems impossible at the moment? Hi, I'm Aaron Tupaz of Positively Brainwashed, and in this video, I will cover The One Thing by Gary Keller and explain why not everything is equal, why multitasking is a myth, how disciplines can turn to habits, discuss how to make the most of our willpower, how to balance our work and personal lives, and lastly, talk about some important focusing questions to help us towards success. Growing up, I was a juggler, did yoga, could memorize hundreds of numbers, was a breakdancer, studied over 10 languages, and much more. I was good at these things, but I never reached world-class level because I did too much and there wasn't enough time in the day. My mind was way too scattered. It would have been better if I had just focused on one thing. The lesson here is that we have only so much time that it's better to specialize than to be a jack of all trades. Like, not everyone deserves a gold medal in the Olympics. It belongs only to the people who put in the work, time, and was dedicated to their one thing. For Mike Phelps, it's swimming. For Usain Bolt, it's sprinting. It's very rare to find someone who is a master of more than one thing. Our goal should be to take our to-do list and to turn it into a success list. That is to keep applying Pareto's 80-20 principle and to narrow it down until there is only one thing left. I made a video on the 80-20 principle and its many layers. Just remember not to get hung up on the numbers. In reality, it could be 90-20 or 65-10 or whatever. But once you establish your one thing, Gary says to aim to do it for at least 4 hours before doing anything else. The second myth is multitasking. This was just a term originally used to describe computers that could switch tasks in such a fast pace that it simply looked like they were doing multiple tasks at the same time. But unlike computers, we can actually do multiple things at the same time, like walking and talking. But like computers, we can only focus on one thing at the same time. Like multitasking is just an opportunity to screw up more than one thing at the same time, like I just did. And it's one of the reasons tragedies like a toddler being left in the bathtub happens. But believe me, multitasking like juggling is just an illusion. In reality, I'm just catching and tossing one ball at a time. And remember, distractions from all our social media and cell phones can make us lose momentum. A 10-minute distraction can cost us another 10 minutes trying to get back to being focused. So do your one thing in an environment that you won't get distracted. People often think that we just simply need more discipline to accomplish more. But success is really like a short race or a sprint that's fueled by discipline just long enough for habit to kick in and take over. When you discipline yourself, you're essentially training yourself to act in a specific way. And so many times when you see others who look like disciplined people, what you're actually seeing is a person who's trained a handful of habits into their lives. Research from the University College of London suggests that it takes an average of 66 days to form a habit. So remember, once a new behavior becomes a habit, it takes less discipline to maintain. Try to build only one new habit at a time. Next, willpower is not on call. It's like a battery that can run out, and once it runs out, you will revert back to your default behavior. So Gary says to use our willpower first on what matters most, which is our one thing. I talk more about why our willpower is not reliable on one of my videos. Next, Gary says to picture juggling 5 balls representing work, family, health, friends, and integrity, with work being made out of rubber that if you drop, it will bounce, and the rest being made out of glass that can shatter. He says to separate these for counterbalancing purposes. Now, when it comes to work, it's okay to be out of balance and neglecting other less important things for a long period of time while you're focusing on your one thing. This is the only way to produce extraordinary results. But when it comes to your personal life, you can't neglect any of it for too long or you'll feel like you have no life. So what you want to do is ask yourself this focusing question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? You can ask this question for any aspect of your work or personal life for both short-term and long-term goals. But avoid asking questions like, what do I do next? Instead, think big and ask yourself what your someday goal is and then work your way backwards. Ask yourself, based on your someday goal, what is the one thing you can do in the next 5 years? Then based on your 5-year goal, what's the best thing you can do this year? Keep doing this until you have figured out what's the one thing you can do right now.
Okay, so last question, time to test our knowledge. What activities demand immediate attention but are often associated with somebody else's goals rather than our own? So let's go straight to the polling. So what activities demand immediate attention but are often associated with someone else's goals rather than our own? Okay, we've had about 60, 70% now have voted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's end the poll. Let's share the results. We have an overwhelming winner, but not everybody has said the same. So the vast majority have said urgent. So let me stop sharing and let's see what. Yes, it is urgent. So congratulations to those of you. So I'm conscious of time. So let's wrap this up. I'm gonna skip it. I've shown that one before, so apologies, Laurie. It's a nice one about relationships, but I'm conscious I want to finish on time. So let's talk about our key takeaways. As Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the American Constitution, said, your time is limited, so don't waste it. So increase your self-awareness, change your attitude. You may need to take action. Take full responsibility for managing your time. Live in the present as you can't change the past. Know what your purpose and why is. Set yourself smart goals because they'll drive you towards that success. and make sure you schedule what your priorities are. So the question I'm going to ask you is, are you going to make the time? Are you going to go the extra mile? So you may have started this session in a bit of a confused state, and hopefully now you've got some ideas that can help you to take some more control. But to be proactive, what are you going to do to record all of your activities? To begin with the end in mind, how are you going to decide what your purpose is? And to put first things first, what can you do to understand what is really important and non-urgent for you? And of course, I'll have more questions when we look at the session next week. So with everything I do, it's about taking action, and ultimately is getting you to make the habits a habit. Are you going to make that time? If you've got any questions, feedback or thoughts, send them through to Laurie, or there's my email address if you wanted to contact me directly. If you're interested or curious about some one-to-one coaching with me, you can send me an email or LinkedIn or via Laurie. And now we've got some time. We've got a couple of minutes. If there are any questions, I'll just leave this up here. If you have the QR code for LinkedIn, if you just put the camera over that, it will automatically link in with me. But I'd like to thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. That's the end of part 1.
So if any questions come in on the chat.
We'll pick them up. No, doesn't.
No, okay.
Okay. So, do you want to hand it back to me then?
Yes, I will stop sharing. I will go to, there we go.
I've lost the slides, but I don't know where they've gone. But okay, all right. So just to remind you that part 2 is on the 28th at 2 o'clock. So a lot of people have already booked for that, but if you haven't booked, then please go onto the Forums International website and www.forumsinternational.co.uk, go into events, and then you can book your free place for the 28th, which is next week. So
Sorry, sorry,
yeah,
I just saw on the chat, I was just checking the chat, somebody asked if we're making the slides available. We're not, but I'm going to have the Super 7s for time management, which you're only going to get it if you come next week.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. And there will be snippets as well that we're actually going to make available, but yeah, so we'll but best way, if you've got questions and things, then straight to Simon. So okay, thank you very much indeed, and have a nice rest of the day. Sun shining. It's 3 o'clock. You must be going out for a walk, Simon. So.